Joining us right now is California Congressman and House Judiciary Committee member Darrell Issa. Sir, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Maria, thanks for having me on, and thanks for playing that excerpt from Leon Panetta, because he's right. This really is the way out, is come up with something that attacks this one phone. I'm sure that Apple would help in the effort to actually attack one phone versus creating a backdoor, which is really what the FBI director is asking for.
So why can't we just zero in on this issue and just one phone then? I mean, I think most people agree that Apple should just unlock this one phone so that the government could look at who this terrorist was communicating with, etc. But the government's not asking for that. So
Exactly, and that's why I went through that series of technical questions with the director, is obviously he is only asking them to perform functions to change their code so that he can attack not one but lots of phones and do it quickly. The reality is that you could attack this phone by the method that I suggested, or at least it's possible you could, and you could have gotten it done in 30 or 40 hours. Now, is that desirable if you want to unlock 175 phones or thousands of phones? No. But when it comes to months ago, having gotten the information that was there to be gotten, if the director had been looking in those terms, as former CIA and Secretary Panetta says, that kind of cooperation was certainly possible. But as you saw yesterday in the testimony, the director didn't even ask for the source code. He didn't have an answer to, well, did you ask some smart Stanford graduate if he could do it for you? The answer was what they wanted is what they wanted, which is they want a backdoor, not just from Apple, but from all the companies here in America.
Wow. So they're using the Apple situation as a way to have much broader reach.
Absolutely. What they want is they want the ability to have courts order companies to essentially bypass their own systems and to do it in a way that is quick and easy, which is exactly what we want to protect the American people from. You know, I showed this yesterday. It's only comical because it's a brand new patent on a self-destructing safe. Even today, there's still a demand for people to have their documents destroyed rather than captured inside an old-fashioned locking safe. It's not something that's obsolete. And by the way, this isn't something that's new, that people want their privacy maintained. And in the past, certainly nobody would have said, well, you've got to make a safe that tells your customers one thing, but actually does something different.
But, Congressman, you are not anti-law enforcement. And the Fourth Amendment makes the way for reasonable search and seizures. And with a valid warrant and a valid court order, even Apple is calling on lawmakers to address this. Going down the road where Apple and all other cell phone makers are making phones that will be inaccessible by law enforcement and by the phone makers themselves. So there has to be some sort of legal path to execute valid search warrants, and they want you guys to do something about it.
Well, you know, Dagan, you're mostly right. I couldn't agree with you more that I'm for law enforcement, and even Apple wants a solution, just as Secretary Panetta said. But let's remember, not everything that you think belongs to the government. Everything that's on that phone pretty well passed through the air at some point. And as you saw just a few months ago, your government wants to capture everything that passes through the air and store it forever. That's not what our founding fathers believed. That was essentially that the Fourth Amendment means only if you can hide it, destroy it, and the government can't find it. And so just as the courts have ruled that you can't surveil in advance all of America so that when you need it, you just go to a locker. You also cannot assume that everyone's personal belongings are there for you to rummage through. Do we want to make sure that this phone can be unlocked if there may be some evidence there? Sure. But as you saw yesterday, the FBI director hasn't gone through the process of one phone unlock. He's tried to order, and in one case succeeded in getting an initial order that would undo the work people are depending on with the iPhone 8 and 9 series.
Yeah, that's really well said, Congressman. Thank you for that. Let me ask you this. Can you explain to us the mistake that was made? We keep talking about this mistake that was made by government right off the bat. They changed the password, and that made it impossible to back up anything on that phone. Is that right?
Well, exactly. If your iPhone if you hook it up to a Wi-Fi, you know, obviously they could go to the house and find the Wi-Fi that they had. You hook it up to either an open Wi-Fi or to the one that the attacker had. You lock it, leave it powered up. It will, about once a day, it will go ahead and it will give a backup to the cloud. Now, to do that, you need those conditions. You power it up, you have it hooked to a charger, it's on a Wi-Fi, and it automatically syncs to the cloud. They know that was the setting. What, unfortunately, is they changed the cloud setting, and that caused the phone to say, I can't do it anymore. So they did have a path had they worked with Apple and said, how do we preserve data on this phone? Now, the director said that wouldn't have gotten everything we wanted. And I think what he was really saying is what we really want is we want the text messages that don't back up. We want other things. And we're not adverse, I think, here in Congress to the fact that Apple should help to the extent they have something. But Maria and Dagan, starting down a road of telling people that they have to execute the process of thinking up and coming up with solutions for the government when the government hasn't even looked to other contractors. And that was one of the questions for the director is, did you go to your own labs and other contractors? Is it Apple the only one that could dream up a solution for a one-time harvest of this information?
These are all the questions that we've been asking for the last couple of weeks. By the way, how much of this is about internationals? I mean, did you see the story yesterday how in Brazil they threw a Facebook executive in jail because Brazilian lawmakers wanted Facebook to give them data of people that they were investigating? How much about this is, you know, Apple's also worried that China is going to say, look, give us all the data because you've got people's data through these phones?
Well, you're 100% right. At least one country in the world will follow us and demand that essentially, and they may not have our Fourth Amendment, demand that they have an open system that they can look at all of their citizens or us if we enter the country.
Exactly.
And at least one country of the world probably will say, you know, maybe one that would give Snowden a place to live, would say, you know what, we'll give you software that nobody can crack so that if you want to do bad, use our software, and both will occur. I think one of the things, and Brazil is a good example, we have a number of countries who very much want to make sure that all their data is localized.
Yeah.
And this case is one of many in which we could end up with 204 countries all demanding that our companies host locally for them, and that's an economic impact to the United States in addition to, at that point, the data is out of our reach.
Yeah, exactly. Congressman, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for those questions yesterday.
Thanks, Maria. My pleasure.
We'll see you soon. Congressman Darrell Issa.
Thank you.